The thunder of hooves shook the earth beneath Lydia Fletcher's boots as she stood frozen in the middle of Main Street, watching 2,000 head of longhorn cattle barrel straight toward her, while dust clouds swallowed the afternoon sun over Galesburg, Illinois, in the summer of 1878. Her mare had spooked moments earlier when a rattlesnake slithered across the road, throwing Lydia hard onto the packed dirt before bolting toward the livery stable. She had barely gotten to her feet when the Stampede rounded the corner, the massive beasts driven into a frenzy by something she could not see. The drovers were shouting, trying desperately to turn the herd, but momentum carried the animals forward like a living avalanche. Lydia's legs felt like lead as her mind screamed at her to move, but the sheer wall of horns and muscle bearing down on her held her transfixed in terror. Then suddenly there were arms around her waist, impossibly strong, lifting her clear off the ground. She gasped as she found herself hauled sideways against a hard chest, the world spinning as a black stallion wheeled beneath them. The cowboy who held her kicked his mount into a gallop, racing parallel to the Stampede for a heart-stopping moment before cutting sharply right, carrying them both onto the wooden sidewalk and behind the relative safety of the general store's thick support beams. The cattle thundered past in a river of brown hides and clacking horns, the noise so deafening that Lydia could feel it in her bones. The cowboy kept his arm locked around her middle, his body curved protectively over hers as his horse danced nervously on the creaking boards. Dust billowed so thick she could taste it, gritty and choking, and still the cattle came, seemingly endless. When the last stragglers finally passed and the dust began to settle, Lydia became acutely aware that she was pressed against a stranger, her back to his chest, his face close enough that she could feel his breath stirring her hair. She turned her head slightly and found herself staring into the most striking pair of green eyes she had ever seen, set in a sun-bronzed face with strong features and a jaw dark with stubble. "You hurt?" His voice was deep and rough, threaded with concern. Lydia shook her head, not quite trusting her voice yet. Her heart was hammering so hard she thought it might burst from her chest, though whether from the near-death experience or the proximity to this stranger, she could not say. "Good." He loosened his hold, and she immediately felt the loss of his warmth despite the summer heat. He swung down from his horse in one fluid motion, then reached up to help her dismount. His hand spanned her waist easily as he lifted her down, setting her on her feet with surprising gentleness for a man with such calloused hands. Up close, she could see he was tall and lean, built like a man who spent his life in the saddle. He wore dark trousers and a faded blue shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms corded with muscle. A black hat sat low on his head, shadowing his eyes, and a gun belt rode his hips with the easy familiarity of someone who knew how to use it. "Thank you," Lydia managed, her voice coming out shakier than she would have liked. "You saved my life. Just happened to be in the right place." He glanced down the street where the drovers were finally getting the herd under control, turning them toward the stockyards on the edge of town. "What happened to your horse?" Snake spooked her. "She threw me and ran." Lydia brushed ineffectually at her dress, which was now covered in dust. Her dark hair had come loose from its pins and hung in tangled waves around her shoulders. She must look like something dragged behind a wagon. "You live in town?" the cowboy asked. "I do now. Just arrived 2 weeks ago from Boston." She extended her hand, remembering her manners despite the extraordinary circumstances. "Lydia Fletcher." He looked at her hand for a moment as if surprised by the gesture, then took it carefully, his rough palm engulfing hers. "Preston Barrett. Folks call me Press." "Well, Mr. Barrett, I owe you a debt I can never repay, if you had not been there." She trailed off, not wanting to think about what would have happened. No debt. His expression was serious, almost grave. But you should be more careful. Galesburg is not Boston. Things are different out here. There was no condescension in his tone, only genuine concern, but Lydia still felt a flash of irritation. I am aware of that, thank you. I did not exactly plan to have my horse bolt. Something that might have been amusement flickered in his eyes. No, I suppose not. He glanced toward the livery stable. I should help you retrieve your mare, make sure she is not hurt. That is very kind, but I have already taken enough of your time. It is not kindness. It is practicality. You should not be walking around town alone after what just happened. You are shaking. Lydia looked down at her hands and realized he was right. They were trembling visibly. The shock was catching up with her now that the immediate danger had passed. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to still the tremors. Press frowned and shrugged out of his vest, draping it around her shoulders before she could protest. It was warm from his body and smelled of leather and sun-dried cotton and something indefinably masculine. Come on, let us find your horse. They walked side by side down the street, Press leading his stallion by the reins. People were emerging from buildings now, exclaiming over the stampede and the damage it had caused. Several storefronts had broken windows and one wagon had been overturned, its contents spilled across the road. Lydia saw more than a few curious glances directed their way, particularly at the vest draped over her shoulders. At the livery stable, they found her mare in one of the stalls, calm now but lathered with nervous sweat. The stable hand, a young man named Tom, looked relieved to see Lydia. Miss Fletcher, thank goodness. I saw your horse come running in and feared the worst when I heard the stampede. I am fine, thanks to Mr. Barrett here. Lydia moved to her mare's side, running her hands over the animal's legs and flanks, checking for injuries. The horse seemed sound, just frightened. Press was doing his own examination, his hands sure and knowledgeable as they moved over the mare. She will be fine, just needs to settle down. He looked at Lydia. You should not ride her today, let her rest. I was planning to ride out to the Thompson ranch. They are expecting me for supper. Are you the new school teacher they have been talking about? I am, or I will be, come September when the school reopens. Lydia had traveled all the way from Boston to take the position, seeking adventure and independence far from her overbearing parents and their plans to marry her off to a banker with more money than personality. Mrs. Thompson has been helping me get settled. She is very kind. The Thompsons are good people. Press seemed to consider something, then said, I am heading that direction myself. I work their ranch. I can take you out there if you are still set on going. On your horse, together. The impropriety of such an arrangement would have scandalized her mother, but Lydia found she did not much care. This was the West, after all, and normal rules seemed to bend differently out here. Unless you would rather walk 5 miles in this heat. Put that way, the choice was obvious. I would appreciate the ride, Mr. Barrett. Press, he corrected. Out here we do not stand much on formality, she smiled. Then you must call me Lydia. They left the mare in Tom's capable hands and set out on Press's stallion, Lydia seated in front of him with his arms bracketing her as he held the reins. It was even more intimate than their first contact during the rescue, and Lydia was hyper-aware of every place their bodies touched. She could feel the solid wall of his chest against her back, the strength of his thighs on either side of hers, the steady rhythm of his breathing. How long have you worked for the Thompsons? She asked, partly to distract herself from the physical sensations that were making her skin feel too tight. About 3 years now. Came up from Texas after a bad drought killed off most of the herd I was working. Mr. Thompson gave me a job when I needed one, and I have stayed. Do you miss Texas? sometimes. But Illinois has grown on me. Winters are harder, but the land is good and the people are decent." He paused. "What made you leave Boston? It is a long way to come for a teaching position." Lydia considered how much to tell him. "I wanted something different from what my life was there. My parents had very specific plans for my future, and they did not align with what I wanted for myself. They wanted you to marry. It was not a question, and Lydia wondered how he had known. They wanted me to marry a particular man. Someone suitable, with the right connections and income. It did not matter that I found him insufferably dull, or that he looked at me like I was another asset to acquire. So you ran. I prefer to think of it as making a strategic retreat." She felt him chuckle, the rumble of it vibrating through her back. "What about you? Do you have family?" "My parents died when I was 12. Cholera. I have been on my own since then, working ranches and cattle drives." His voice was matter-of-fact, but Lydia heard the old grief beneath it. "I am sorry. That must have been very difficult. It was a long time ago." He shifted slightly, and Lydia felt his arm tighten fractionally around her middle. "You adjust to what life gives you." They rode in companionable silence for a while, following the road that led out of town and into the surrounding farmland. The prairie stretched out on either side, golden with late summer growth, and the sky arched overhead in a vast blue dome that seemed impossibly large compared to the narrow streets and tall buildings of Boston. Lydia had been awed by the sheer openness of the landscape since her arrival, the way she could see for miles in every direction. "It is beautiful here," she said softly. "It grows on you." Press's voice was close to her ear. "At first, the emptiness can feel overwhelming. But after a while, you start to see that it is not empty at all. It is full of life, just different from what you are used to." Lydia turned her head to look at him and found his face very close to hers. For a moment, their eyes met and held, and something electric passed between them. Press's gaze dropped to her lips, and Lydia's breath caught in her throat. Then he looked away, clearing his throat as he focused on the road ahead. "We will be there soon," he said, his voice rougher than before. The Thompson Ranch sprawled across several hundred acres, with a large main house, barn, and various outbuildings. Cattle grazed in distant pastures, and Lydia could see several men working with horses in a corral near the barn. Press rode straight to the house, where Mrs. Thompson emerged onto the porch, wiping her hands on her apron. "Lydia, dear, I was beginning to worry." Margaret Thompson was a plump, motherly woman in her late 40s with graying hair and a warm smile. Then she caught sight of Press, and her eyebrows rose. "Press Barrett, did you bring our school teacher out here on your horse? Her mare threw her in town, and then there was a stampede. I did not think she should ride out alone." Press dismounted and reached up to help Lydia down. "A stampede? Good heavens, are you hurt, Mrs.?" Thompson hurried down the steps, her face creased with concern. "I am fine, thanks to Mr. Barrett. He swept me out of the path of the cattle at considerable risk to himself." "Press saved you." Mrs. Thompson looked between them with an expression that Lydia could not quite read. "Well then, Press, you must stay for supper, I insist. It is the least we can do." "I appreciate the offer, madam, but I have work to see to." "The work can wait. Daniel will understand." She fixed him with a look that brooked no argument. "Besides, I made apple pie, and you know you cannot resist my apple pie." Press's lips twitched in what might have been a smile. "No, madam, I cannot. Thank you." Supper at the Thompson Ranch was a lively affair. Besides the Thompsons and their 3 children ranging in age from 8 to 15. There were 2 other ranch hands who ate with the family, and of course Lydia and Press. The conversation flowed easily. touching on everything from the upcoming harvest to the new railroad spur that was being built to connect Galesburg with the main line. Lydia found herself seated across from Press, and she was acutely aware of him throughout the meal. She noticed the way his hands moved with unconscious grace as he ate, the rare smiles he gave when one of the Thompson children told a joke, the way he listened carefully when someone spoke. He was a quiet man, she realized, but not because he had nothing to say. Rather, he seemed to choose his words carefully, speaking only when he had something worth contributing. "So, Lydia," Mr. Thompson said as his wife served the promised apple pie, "are you looking forward to starting your teaching duties?" "Very much so. I have been preparing lessons and getting the schoolhouse in order. Mrs. Thompson has been invaluable in helping me understand what the children will need. Most of them are farm children," Mrs. Thompson explained to the table at large. "They will be needed for harvest, so attendance will be spotty in the fall, but come winter you should have a full classroom. I understand. I plan to be flexible with their schedules." Lydia took a bite of pie and could not suppress a small sound of pleasure. "Mrs. Thompson, this is extraordinary." The older woman beamed. "My grandmother's recipe. I will teach it to you if you like." "I would love that." After supper, Press excused himself to see to his horse, and Lydia found an excuse to follow him to the barn. She was not quite ready for the evening to end, though she could not have said exactly why. Something about this quiet cowboy drew her in a way she had never experienced before. She found him in the stallion's stall, checking the animal's hooves. He looked up when she entered, surprise flickering across his face. "Did you need something?" "I wanted to thank you again properly without an audience." Lydia moved closer, running her hand along the horse's sleek neck. "What you did today was incredibly brave. It was instinct, nothing more." "It was more than that. You could have been killed." Press straightened, standing close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "So could you? That was what mattered." "Why?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. "You did not know me." He was quiet for a long moment, studying her face in the dim light filtering through the barn's high windows. "I cannot explain it," he finally said. "When I saw you standing there, frozen in the path of that stampede, something in me just reacted. I did not think. I just knew I had to get to you." Lydia's heart was pounding again, but this time it had nothing to do with fear. "I am glad you did. So am I." His voice was barely above a whisper. They stood there in the golden dimness of the barn, surrounded by the soft sounds of horses and the sweet smell of hay, and Lydia felt something shift inside her. This was nothing like the carefully orchestrated courtship she had known in Boston, the formal dances and chaperoned visits and calculated conversations. This was raw and real and entirely unexpected. "Press," she began, not sure what she wanted to say. "Mr. Barrett." One of the ranch hands appeared at the barn door. "Boss needs you to look at one of the mares. She is favoring her left foreleg." The moment broke and Press stepped back. "I will be right there." He looked at Lydia. "I should go." "Of course." She managed a smile, though she felt strangely bereft. "Thank you again for everything today." "You are welcome, Lydia." The way he said her name, soft and careful as if it were something precious, made warmth bloom in her chest. She watched him walk away, then made her way back to the house, her mind whirling with thoughts she was not quite ready to examine. Over the following weeks, Lydia found herself crossing paths with Press more often than seemed strictly coincidental. He would be in town on errands when she was shopping for school supplies. He would happen to ride past the schoolhouse while she was working on cleaning and organizing the classroom. He offered to help her move the heavy desks, to repair a broken window, to build new shelves for the books the town had collected. Lydia was not naive enough to believe these encounters were entirely accidental. and the realization made her pulse quicken. Preston Barrett was interested in her, and she was definitely interested in him. But neither of them seemed quite sure how to bridge the gap between their careful courtesy and something more. One Saturday afternoon in late August, Lydia was at the general store purchasing fabric for curtains for the schoolhouse when Press walked in. He stopped short when he saw her, and something soft crossed his face before he composed his features. "Miss Fletcher." "Mr. Barrett." They had fallen back into formality in public, though in private they used first names. "How are you today?" "Well, thank you." He came to stand beside her at the counter, and she caught the now familiar scent of him, leather and sun and something uniquely Press. "Are you making curtains?" "Attempting to. I am not the most skilled seamstress, but the windows need covering. Mrs. Thompson is excellent with a needle. I am sure she would be happy to help if you asked." "That is a good idea." Lydia paid for her fabric and thread, tucking the wrapped parcel under her arm. "I was just about to have lunch at the hotel dining room. Would you care to join me?" She saw surprise flash in his eyes, followed by pleasure. In Boston, such a forward invitation from an unmarried woman would have been scandalous, but Lydia was learning that Western manners were more relaxed, born of necessity and practicality rather than rigid social codes. "I would like that very much," Press said. They walked together to the hotel, Lydia very aware of the speculative glances from townspeople they passed. Let them talk, she thought. She was tired of living her life according to other people's expectations. The dining room was half full, and they took a table by the window. The waitress, a young woman named Sally, brought them water and menus, her eyes darting between them with barely concealed interest. "The whole town will be talking about this by supper time," Lydia said wryly after Sally had taken their orders and departed. Press's mouth quirked. "Does that bother you?" "Not particularly. Does it bother you?" "No." He leaned back in his chair, studying her with those sharp green eyes. "You are not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "I am not sure. But not someone who would leave everything familiar to come out here. Not someone who would care more about what she wants than what people think she should want." "The West seems to encourage that kind of thinking," Lydia said. "Or perhaps it is just that being so far from home has made me braver." "I do not think it is the distance. I think you were always brave. You just needed the freedom to show it." His words warmed her more than they probably should. "You barely know me." "I know enough. I have seen you work yourself to exhaustion getting that schoolhouse ready. I have watched you win over the children who come by to see the new teacher. I saw you face down a stampede and keep your composure even when you were terrified." He paused. "And I have seen the way you look at this place, like it is full of possibilities instead of limitations." Lydia felt heat rise in her cheeks. "How do I look at it?" "Like you finally found where you belong." Something in his tone made her meet his eyes. "Is that how you feel? Like you belong here?" "I am starting to," Press said quietly. Their food arrived, but Lydia barely tasted it. She was too focused on the man across from her, on the careful way they were circling around something neither seemed ready to name. They talked about easy things, safe things, but beneath the surface, Lydia felt the pull of something much deeper and more intense. When they finished eating and stepped back out into the afternoon sunshine, Press cleared his throat. "There is a barn dance next Saturday at the Hendersons' place. Would you like to go with me?" Lydia's heart leaped. "Are you asking to court me, Preston Barrett?" He met her gaze squarely. "Yes, I am. If you are willing to be courted by a ranch hand with nothing much to offer but a steady wage and a good work ethic. I left a wealthy banker in Boston who could have given me a mansion and a house full of servants," Lydia said. "What he could not give me was someone who saw me as a person rather than an ornament, someone who made me feel alive, someone who would risk his own life to save mine without hesitation. She stepped closer, her voice dropping. So yes, I would very much like you to court me. Press's face transformed, a smile breaking across it that made him look years younger. Then I will call for you at 6 on Saturday. I will be ready. Saturday could not come fast enough for Lydia. She found herself distracted and daydreaming, which was entirely unlike her normally practical nature. Mrs. Thompson noticed, of course, and cornered her one afternoon when Lydia was visiting the ranch. "You are courting Preston Barrett," the older woman said. "It was not a question." "I am." "I hope that does not present any difficulties for you and Mr. Thompson, since Press works here." "Difficulties? Good heavens, no. Press is one of the finest men I know, and you are a wonderful young woman. I could not be more pleased." Mrs. Thompson squeezed her hand. "But I do want to make sure you understand what you would be taking on. Press is a good man, but he is a cowboy, Lydia. His life is hard work and uncertainty. There will be no fancy houses or society parties. I know, and I do not want those things. I want something real." Lydia hesitated, then added, "Mrs. Thompson, I feel something with Press that I have never felt before. When I am with him, I feel like myself in a way I never did in Boston. Is that foolish?" "Not foolish at all, dear. That is what it should feel like when it is real." Mrs. Thompson smiled. "My Daniel swept me off my feet 30 years ago, and I have not regretted a single day, even the hard ones. If Press makes you feel that way, then you should see where it leads." Where it led, over the next few months, was deeper into love than Lydia had imagined possible. Press courted her with quiet intensity, showing up with wildflowers he had picked on his rides, teaching her to handle a horse with more confidence, sitting in on her lessons at the schoolhouse, and helping the older boys with arithmetic he had learned managing ranch accounts. They talked for hours about everything and nothing, Lydia telling him about her childhood in Boston, her love of books, her dreams of making a difference in the lives of her students. Press shared stories of his years on the trail, the beauty and brutality of a cowboy's life, his hope of eventually having a small ranch of his own. The more time they spent together, the more certain Lydia became that she had found something extraordinary. Press treated her as an equal, valued her opinions, encouraged her ambitions. He made her laugh with his dry wit, and he made her feel safe in a way that had nothing to do with physical protection and everything to do with emotional trust. Their first kiss came in October, after a community gathering at the schoolhouse to celebrate the harvest. Press walked her home through the crisp autumn night, their breath misting in the cold air. At her door, he had taken her hands in his. "Lydia, I need to tell you something." His serious tone made her heart skip. "What is it?" "I am falling in love with you. I think I started falling the moment I pulled you out of that stampede, and every day since has just made it deeper." He squeezed her hands gently. "I know we have not known each other long, and I know I am not the kind of man your parents would have chosen for you. But I promise you, if you give me a chance, I will spend every day trying to make you happy." Tears stung Lydia's eyes, but they were good tears, joyful tears. "Press, I am already in love with you. I think I have been for weeks, but I was afraid to say it." "Why afraid?" "Because it feels too big, too fast. Because everything I was taught said this was not how it was supposed to happen, but I do not care anymore what I was taught. I only care about what I feel, and what I feel is that I love you." Press cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away the tears that had spilled over. "Can I kiss you, please?" He kissed her with such tenderness that Lydia felt something in her chest crack open. His lips were warm despite the cold night, moving against hers with a gentle insistence that made her knees weak. She wound her arms around his neck, pressing closer, and felt his arms come around her waist, holding her as if she were something infinitely precious. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Press rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me, Lydia." She laughed, breathless and dizzy with happiness. "That is quite a leap from our first kiss. I know what I want, and what I want is a life with you if you will have me." Lydia pulled back enough to look into his eyes, seeing the vulnerability there beneath the certainty. This strong, capable man was offering her his heart, trusting her with it completely. How could she do anything but treasure that gift? "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." Press kissed her again, and this time there was nothing tentative about it. This was a claiming, a promise, a celebration all at once. Lydia melted into it, into him, feeling like she had finally found the place she was meant to be. They married in November, in a simple ceremony at the church with half the town in attendance. Lydia wore a dress of ivory silk that Mrs. Thompson had helped her sew, and Press wore his best suit, looking devastatingly handsome and slightly uncomfortable in the formal clothing. When he saw her walking down the aisle, though, his face lit up with such love that Lydia felt her own smile widen in response. "Dearly beloved," the minister began, and Lydia barely heard the rest. She was too focused on Press, on the way he held her hands, on the emotion shining in his eyes as they spoke their vows. "I, Preston Barrett, take you, Lydia Fletcher, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to love you, honor you, protect you, and stand by your side through whatever comes. You are my heart, my home, and my future." Lydia's voice was thick with tears as she responded. "I, Lydia Fletcher, take you, Preston Barrett, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love you, support you, believe in you, and build a life with you full of joy and purpose. You are my partner, my love, and my greatest adventure." When the minister pronounced them married and told Press he could kiss his bride, Press did so with such enthusiasm that the congregation laughed and applauded. Lydia felt her cheeks burn, but she did not care. She was married to the man she loved, and nothing else mattered. The Thompsons hosted a reception at their ranch, and the celebration went late into the night. There was music and dancing, abundant food, and more well-wishes than Lydia could count. As she danced with her new husband under the lantern-lit barn rafters, she felt a contentment so complete it was almost overwhelming. "Happy," Press murmured in her ear. "More than I ever thought possible. Good, because I plan to keep you this happy for the next 50 years at least." Lydia laughed. "Only 50, maybe 60, if I am lucky enough to live that long with you." They had rented a small house in town, close enough to the schoolhouse that Lydia could walk to work, but with enough land for Press to keep a few horses and dream of eventually expanding into their own ranch. It was modest, but it was theirs, and Lydia loved every inch of it. That first night in their new home, with the fire crackling in the hearth and the wind howling outside, Press carried her over the threshold and set her down gently. His hands shook slightly as he helped her remove the pins from her hair, letting the dark waves fall free around her shoulders. "Are you nervous?" Lydia asked softly. "A little. I want to do right by you." She took his face in her hands. "You already do, every single day." What followed was tender and passionate, awkward and beautiful, a joining that went beyond the physical to something deeper. Press was gentle with her, patient, making sure she felt safe and cherished. And when they finally lay tangled together, spent and happy, Lydia felt a bone-deep certainty that this was exactly where she was meant to be. The first year of their marriage was not without challenges. Money was tight, especially with Lydia only teaching part-time due to the seasonal nature of farm life. Press took on extra work breaking horses and doing odd jobs around town to supplement his wages from the Thompson ranch. They learned to navigate the little frictions that came with merging two lives, from how to manage their limited funds to whose turn it was to cook supper. But through it all, their love only grew stronger. They learned each other's rhythms, their quirks and habits. Lydia discovered that Press was grumpy in the mornings until he had his coffee, but that he sang while he worked with the horses, his voice low and surprisingly melodic. Press learned that Lydia needed quiet time alone with her books to recharge, but that she came alive when teaching, her passion for education shining through. In the spring of 1880, Lydia realized she was pregnant. She told Press one evening after supper, watching nervously for his reaction. His face went through a series of emotions, shock, fear, and then pure joy before he scooped her up and spun her around, laughing. "We are going to have a baby. We are going to have a baby. Lord, Lydia, I love you so much." He set her down carefully, his hands immediately going to her still flat stomach. "Are you feeling all right? Do you need to sit down? Should you be working?" His sudden anxiousness made her laugh. "I am fine, Press. Women have babies all the time. I can still teach for several more months." But what if something happens? What if she cut him off with a kiss? "Nothing is going to happen. We are going to be fine. All three of us." Their son was born in November, a healthy baby with Press's green eyes and a powerful set of lungs. They named him Thomas Daniel Barrett, after Press's father and Mr. Thompson, who had become like a father to Press over the years. Holding his son for the first time, Press cried openly, something Lydia had never seen him do before. "He is perfect," Press whispered, touching Tommy's tiny hand with a finger. "Thank you, Lydia. Thank you for this gift." Lydia was exhausted and sore, but watching her husband with their son filled her with a love so fierce it bordered on painful. "We made him together. We did. And he is going to have a good life, I promise. He is going to have everything I did not. He is going to have what matters most, two parents who love him and each other." Motherhood came more naturally to Lydia than she had expected, though the sleepless nights and constant demands were challenging. Press was a devoted father, walking the floor with Tommy when he was fussy, changing diapers without complaint, and showing a tenderness that made Lydia fall even deeper in love with her husband. When Tommy was 6 months old, Mr. Thompson made Press an offer that would change their lives. He wanted to sell off 100 acres of his land, a parcel with good water and grazing, and he wanted Press to have the first opportunity to buy it. "I am getting older," Mr. Thompson explained as they sat in his office, "and you have been loyal to me for years. You deserve your own place, Press. I will sell it to you for a fair price and you can pay me over time." Press was speechless for a long moment, then managed, "Mr. Thompson, I do not know what to say. That is more generous than I ever dreamed. You have earned it. And I know you will make good use of that land. What do you say?" "Yes, absolutely yes." That night, Press swept Lydia and Tommy up in a jubilant embrace. "We are going to have our own ranch, Lydia, our own land." "Oh, Press, that is wonderful." Lydia felt tears of happiness streaming down her face. "We are really going to do this. We are really going to do this. It will be hard work, and it will take years to build up the herd and make the place profitable. But it will be ours." They moved to their land that spring, building a small house with help from the Thompsons and half the men in town. It was a simple structure, just 3 rooms and a loft, but it was sturdy and well built, positioned to take advantage of the shade from a grove of cottonwoods and the view of the rolling prairie. Press was gone long hours working both their land and continuing to help Mr. Thompson. But every evening he came home to Lydia and Tommy, his face weary but content. They would eat supper together, then Press would play with his son while Lydia cleaned up, and then they would sit together on the porch, watching the sun set over their land. "Do you ever regret leaving Boston?" Press asked one evening, Tommy asleep on his chest. Lydia looked at her husband and son, at the home they had built together, at the vast prairie stretching out before them full of possibility. Not for a single moment. This is where I belong. With you. Press reached out and took her hand, threading their fingers together. I am the luckiest man alive. We are both lucky. We found each other. Over the years, their ranch grew slowly but steadily. Press proved to have a gift for selecting good breeding stock, and their cattle thrived on the rich prairie grass. Lydia continued teaching when she could, though they had 3 more children over the next 6 years. A daughter named Rose, then twin boys they called Jack and Sam. The house expanded to accommodate their growing family, adding rooms and a proper barn, a chicken coop, and a vegetable garden that Lydia tended with the help of the children. Life was busy and often exhausting, but it was full in a way that Lydia's Boston existence had never been. She exchanged letters with her parents occasionally, and eventually they came to visit, curious about the life their daughter had chosen. Her mother was clearly scandalized by the simple accommodations and the rough-hewn lifestyle, but her father surprised Lydia by taking to Press immediately. "He is a good man," her father said on the last day of their visit. "I can see that he loves you and the children, and you are happy, Lydia, truly happy in a way you never were back east." "I am, Papa. This is the life I was meant to live." Her father hugged her tightly. "Then I am glad you were brave enough to find it." The years rolled past, full of the rhythms of ranch life. Calving season and branding, planting and harvest, bitter winters and scorching summers. There were good years when the cattle prices were high and the weather cooperated, and lean years when drought or early snows made every day a struggle. Through it all, Press and Lydia faced everything together, their partnership growing deeper with each passing season. Tommy grew into a serious, responsible boy who followed his father everywhere, learning the ways of cattle and horses. Rose was bright and curious, inheriting her mother's love of books and learning. The twins were mischievous troublemakers who kept everyone on their toes. On their 10th anniversary, Press surprised Lydia with a trip back to Galesburg for a night at the hotel, the same one where they had shared their first meal together. Mrs. Thompson happily agreed to watch the children, shooing them off with a knowing smile. In their hotel room, Press pulled out a small velvet box. "I never properly gave you an engagement ring. We married so quickly and money was so tight, but I have been saving." Lydia opened the box and gasped. Inside was a simple gold band set with a small diamond that caught the lamplight and threw rainbows across the walls. "Press, it is beautiful." He slipped it onto her finger, where it nestled against her wedding band. "Not as beautiful as you, not nearly as beautiful as the life you have given me." Lydia kissed him deeply, pouring 10 years of love and gratitude into it. "Do you remember the day we met, when you swept me up and saved me from that stampede?" "I remember every detail. The way you looked, frozen in the middle of the street. The way you felt in my arms when I pulled you onto my horse. The way you looked at me afterward like I was something special. You are something special. You are everything to me." They made love slowly, tenderly, celebrating a decade of marriage and partnership and love. Afterward, lying in Press's arms, Lydia felt overwhelmed with gratitude for the twist of fate that had brought them together. "What are you thinking about?" Press asked, his fingers trailing idly up and down her spine. "I am thinking about how one moment can change everything. If that snake had not spooked my horse, if I had not been thrown, if you had not been there at that exact moment. But I was there, and I always will be. Promise, promise." The children grew and the ranch prospered. By 1895, the Barrett spread was one of the most successful in the county, and Press had earned a reputation as a fair dealer and expert cattleman. Lydia had become a pillar of the community, serving on the school board and organizing charitable efforts for families in need. Tommy married a neighboring rancher's daughter and took over more of the daily operations, giving Press time to slow down and enjoy his grandchildren when they came along. Rose went to college in Chicago, then came home to teach at the same schoolhouse where her mother had started, eventually taking over as head teacher when Lydia decided to retire. The twins went into business together, opening a feed store in Galesburg that served ranchers throughout the region. On a warm summer evening in 1900, 22 years after the stampede that had brought them together, Press and Lydia sat on their porch watching the sunset. They were both in their 40s now, with silver threading through their hair and lines on their faces earned through years of hard work and laughter. "You ever think about how different your life would have been if you had stayed in Boston?" Press asked. Lydia leaned against his shoulder, feeling the steady strength of him. "Sometimes. I would have married that banker, lived in a big house, hosted society parties. I would have been comfortable and bored and quietly miserable. You think you would have been happy? No. I would not have even known what I was missing, but I would have spent my whole life feeling like something was not quite right, like there was a space inside me that nothing could fill." She turned to look at him. "You fill that space, Press. You and our life together and our children. You make me whole." Press kissed her temple. "You saved me just as much as I saved you that day." "How so?" "I was drifting before I met you, going through the motions, working hard but never really building toward anything. You gave me a reason to want more, to dream bigger. You gave me a home, a family, a purpose." His arm tightened around her. "You gave me everything that matters." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to emerge, scattered diamonds against the darkening sky. In the distance, they could hear Tommy calling the hands in for supper, and the laughter of their grandchildren playing in the yard. "We did all right, did we not?" Lydia said softly. "We did more than all right. We built something real and lasting. We raised good children. We have a good life." Press stood and pulled her to her feet, gathering her into his arms. "And I still love you just as much as I did the day I married you. More even. More. Every year with you teaches me new ways to love you, new reasons to be grateful. You are still the bravest, most extraordinary woman I have ever known." Lydia felt tears prick her eyes. After all these years, Press could still make her feel like a young woman falling in love for the first time. "Dance with me." "There is no music. We do not need music." So they danced on their porch in the twilight, swaying gently to a rhythm only they could hear, surrounded by the life they had built together. And as Press held her close, Lydia thought back to that terrifying moment when she had stood frozen in the path of a stampede, never imagining that her rescue would lead to the greatest love story she could have dreamed. Sometimes, she thought, the best things in life came from the most unexpected places. Sometimes you had to leave everything familiar behind to find where you truly belonged. And sometimes, just sometimes, one moment of courage could change everything. As the years continued to pass, Press and Lydia grew old together with grace and gratitude. They watched their grandchildren grow, celebrated the arrival of great-grandchildren, and continued to work the land they loved, though at a gentler pace. The ranch remained in the family, passing to Tommy and eventually to his children, ensuring that the Barrett legacy would continue for generations to come. On their 50th wedding anniversary in 1928, the whole family gathered for a celebration that drew people from across the county. Press and Lydia, both in their 70s now but still sharp and spry, renewed their vows in front of their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. "I, Preston Barrett, still take you, Lydia Fletcher Barrett, to be my wife," Press said, his voice strong despite his years. You have been my partner, my love, and my best friend for 50 years, and I thank God for every single day." Lydia was crying openly now, tears streaming down her weathered face. "I, Lydia Fletcher Barrett, still take you, Preston Barrett, to be my husband. You swept me off my feet in more ways than one, and you have never let me fall. I love you more than words can say." When they kissed, their family erupted in applause and cheers, and Lydia thought her heart might burst from the fullness of it all. 50 years of marriage, of partnership, of building a life together from nothing but love and determination. 50 years of joy and sorrow, triumph and struggle, all of it worthwhile because they had faced it together. That night, lying in bed in the room they had shared for decades, Press pulled Lydia close. His body was not as strong as it once had been, and her joints ached more than they used to, but the love between them had only deepened with time. "Thank you," Press whispered into the darkness. "For what?" "For saying yes all those years ago. For taking a chance on a cowboy with nothing but dreams. For building this life with me. For loving me the way you do." Lydia reached up to touch his face, tracing the familiar lines and angles she knew better than her own. "Thank you for saving me. Not just from that stampede, but from a life that would have slowly suffocated my spirit. Thank you for seeing me, really seeing me, and loving what you saw." "Always," Press murmured, already drifting toward sleep. "Always and forever." Lydia lay awake a while longer, listening to the steady rhythm of her husband's breathing, feeling the warmth of his body beside hers. Outside, the prairie wind sang through the cottonwoods, the same trees that had shaded their first small house all those years ago. Everything had changed, and nothing had changed. The land endured, the love endured, and that was all that mattered. When Press passed away peacefully in his sleep 5 years later at the age of 78, Lydia mourned him deeply but without bitterness. They had been given 55 years together, and she treasured every moment. At his funeral, she stood beside his grave and spoke from her heart. "This man saved my life in more ways than I can count. He showed me what love really means, not just in words but in actions, day after day, year after year. He built a legacy not just in land and cattle, but in the values he passed on to our children and grandchildren. Hard work, integrity, kindness, and above all, love. I am grateful beyond measure for the life we shared, and I will carry him in my heart until I draw my last breath." Lydia lived another 10 years, surrounded by her loving family, finally passing in her sleep at the age of 88. She was laid to rest beside Press, their headstones standing side by side overlooking the ranch they had built together. On her stone, their children had inscribed a simple epitaph: "Beloved wife, mother, and teacher." She found her true home in the West, and in the arms of the cowboy who swept her to safety. The Barrett Ranch continues to this day, now run by the 5th generation of the family. And sometimes, when the wind blows just right across the prairie, people say you can feel the presence of Press and Lydia still, their love as enduring as the land itself, their story a testament to the power of courage, faith, and a love that began in a single desperate moment and lasted a lifetime. In the end, that is what mattered most. Not the size of the ranch or the number of cattle or any material measure of success. What mattered was that a Boston schoolteacher and a Texas cowboy found each other in the middle of the Illinois prairie, defied expectations, built a life together, and loved each other with a fierce devotion that time could not diminish. Their story became legend in the community, passed down through generations as an example of true love and the possibilities that existed in the wild, open spaces of the West, where anything seemed possible if you were brave enough to reach for it.